In a Chingu Voyage, you very quickly learn that developing as part of a team requires communication and coordination. In fact, a lot of communication and coordination. In this video, we're going to provide you with a process that can be followed to help create the product backlog, defining what you'll need to do to build your application. This is based on the Agile principle that we'll be doing the right thing at the right time and not before. So let's get started. So what is a product backlog? What does it contain? And why is it so important that you need to create it before designing your app and writing any code? Very simply, it's the container for the activities that need to be completed in order to build your app. And as such, it helps you deal with the ambiguity, uncertainty, and unanticipated changes, time pressures, and resource constraints that you'll be faced with along the way. The backlog is also important because it gives the entire team a common view of the project's work status. It's the starting point for the planning that takes place at the beginning of each and every sprint because it shows that the status of each and every activity. The three types of activities you'll be adding are epics, user stories, and tasks, and we'll describe these in detail in a moment. But even more important is the fact that the activities in the backlog are the basis for your team's collaboration. In any given sprint, you'll focus only on the activities to be completed in that sprint. But you'll be updating the backlog as new information, questions, and issues are uncovered. This helps you prepare for future sprints, but it still keeps you focused on what you need to accomplish now. Next, let's take a closer look at what epics, user stories, and tasks are and how they relate to one another. Creating these activities mirrors the Agile methodology since we first create epics for each application feature, then we create user stories for the activities users must perform to realize the benefits of a particular feature, and then finally, tasks build on the user stories to describe what needs to be done to implement them. As you can see, epics are extremely broad, tasks are very detailed, and user stories are somewhere in between. You will always have more user stories than epics and more tasks than user stories. And this is because each level refines the concepts created in the level above it. Creating a product backlog consists of these 5 steps. Remember when we said that building your backlog is an agile process? These steps are iterative with each one building upon the previous step to add the details you need to create your app. Let's go over each one of these steps now in just a little bit more detail. For your backlog to be effective, it has to be easy to use, shareable across the team, and it should allow its contents to be graphically displayed. The most popular graphical format is the Kanban board, which contains vertical silos that show the current state of each activity. These states are new, waiting, in progress, ready for validation, and completed. At a glance, this lets you see the overall state of your project, and it also lets you track items as they're being worked on. It doesn't matter what tool you use. In fact, if your team were all located in the same office space, you could even use a whiteboard. However, electronic solutions are really the only solution for remote teams. If you're unsure about which tool best suits your team's needs, feel free to ask your fellow Chingus in the Ask Cohort and Code Questions channel in the Discord community. Now let's turn our attention to the project's vision statement. This is a very high-level statement of what the problem is that needs to be solved, the proposed solution, who it's targeted to help, and finally, the main use cases. In a commercial organization, the vision statement is an agreement between the group that's sponsoring the application and the development team. This is usually a joint effort of the representatives of the end users and the development team. Everything your team does should be directly linked to this vision statement. Remember, features stem from the use cases. user stories are based in features, and tasks are based in the user stories. If you can't trace any one of these back to the vision statement, then you should question whether it's something that really needs to be implemented. Epics are very high-level statements of the functionality the app promises to provide to its users. As such, they don't require a lot of detail because they are so broad. This is especially true since user stories and tasks, which do have more detail, are derived from them. Of the three types of activities you will be adding to your product backlog, epics are the easiest to identify since you can take them directly from the use cases in the vision statement. There is also a one-to-one relationship between your use cases and your epics. You'll simply add one epic to your backlog for each use case. User stories are actions that users will perform to realize the benefits of a particular feature that's defined by an epic. Creating a set of user stories is a process of decomposing an epic into a series of steps. This is where you first start to think about how the user will interact with the app. Given that epics are so broad, you will usually find there are at least two, and quite often more user stories for each one. In this example, we've intentionally kept the stories very short, but your user stories will most likely have a little bit more detail. In fact, user stories normally take the form of a series of sentences. As a given role, I want to take an action so that I can achieve a particular type of value. In this example, you can see the only user role that we're concerned with are teachers. But keep in mind that depending upon what your app is doing, you may have different types of user roles that it needs to support. An additional bit of advice is it's not yet time to create sketches or wireframes of the application's UI. It's a bit too early for this, and it can lead to unnecessary rework until you've defined the major user stories. However, juxtaposed to this is the fact that you shouldn't be concerned with identifying each and every detail. Now, since you're following an agile methodology, you'll be deferring detailed design, coding, and testing to later sprints. Remember, we're doing the right thing at the right point in time. This means your backlog is a living document that is refined throughout the life of the entire project. The final step in this process is to create individual tasks for each user story. Just as there are multiple user stories for each epic, there are also multiple tasks for each user story. Tasks include elements of the UI/UX that support the story, but they may also include technical tasks such as backend, API, and database work. And just like the user stories, don't worry about getting everything perfect. In fact, don't worry about missing tasks. You'll be refining both the design and any code you create as the sprints progress. When you add your tasks to the backlog, you may also add notes to them with details that you or other developers on your team will find helpful. You may also do this as the sprints take place. For example, when the time comes to identify profile fields, you might want to add a description of what those fields are as a note to the task. Once you complete this step, your backlog will have the information you need to sketch the UI and even create a wireframe. You will certainly have what you need to start planning your first sprint. Finally, it's very important to keep in mind that the backlog is a living document, and you'll be updating and refining it in each and every sprint through the end of your project. This concludes how to create a product backlog, and I hope you found it helpful. Feel free to ask questions that you have and to seek help in the Ask Cohort and Code Questions channel in our Discord community. Good luck in your voyage, and we can't wait to see the app that you and your team will be creating.